there are a lot of cameras out there. ZWO, QHY, Player 1, Touptek, all using the same Sony sensors, all promising the sharpest stars and the cleanest data. But once you dig in, it gets messy fast. This is Edisla's ultimate guide to dedicated astrophotography cameras. We'll break down the specs that actually matter, explore the real debates, mono versus color, cooled versus uncooled, and look under the hood of all those look-alike brands. Then we'll talk about how to actually choose a camera based on your sky, your gear, and your goals, with real-world examples to back it up. And finally, we'll take a peek at the new wave, QHY's Minicam, smart air cameras from ZWO, and the hard-earned tips to avoid the beginner traps. Let's get into it. It wasn't always this way. Before moving forward, let's take a quick look at the past. 10 years ago, your choices were limited. Some cooled CCDs, a few modified DSLRs. Simple, predictable, expensive? CMOS back then, they were the underdogs, plagued by high noise, poor low-light sensitivity, and uneven image quality. Then Sony dropped the IMX CMOS sensors. Noise plummeted, speed shot up, prices fell. And just like that, the floodgates opened. ZWO turned it into a movement, QHY brought scientific credibility. Then came the second wave. Player 1, Touptek, Rising Cam, Omegon, and a dozen more. Most of them built around the same Sony sensors, just wrapped in different shells with different drivers and different promises. Today, CCDs have quietly bowed out. The CMOS era is here. Now, to understand what really matters, let's break down the camera specs, piece by piece, so you have a basic foundation before choosing your first camera. Because once you understand the basics, the marketing buzz starts to fall apart. We'll start with resolution. That's the total number of pixels on your sensor. 9 megapixels, 26 megapixels, more megapixels can mean more detail. But they only mean more detail if your telescope and sky can actually resolve that detail. If you're under turbulent skies or using average optics, extra resolution won't help. It just makes your files bigger and you're stacking slower. So don't chase megapixels blindly. Match your resolution to your focal length and your seeing. The ASI 2600 has a 26 MP sensor, but to make full use of it, you'll need a long focal length scope and very stable skies. Otherwise, a lower res camera like the ASI 533 might deliver sharper actual results. Now zoom in to pixel size. This tells you how big each individual pixel is. Larger pixels, say 4.6 or 5.8 microns, collect more light. That makes them ideal for faint nebulae, longer exposures, or setups where guiding isn't perfect. Smaller pixels, 2.4 or 2.9 microns, can capture finer detail, but only if your optics are sharp and your mount is precise. For instance, the QHY 268M, ASI 2600, and ASI 533 all use 3.76 micrometers pixels. Great for high-resolution targets like galaxies if your mount can handle the precision. The ASI 294 has larger 4.63 micrometers pixels, making it more forgiving and better for wide fields or less than perfect guiding. Meanwhile, the IMX 585 uses 2.9 micrometers pixels, smaller and more demanding, but capable of fine detail if your optics and tracking are up to the task. So here's Edisla's rule of thumb. Big pixels are forgiving. Small pixels are demanding. Then there's sensor size. Sensor size defines your field of view. A small sensor gives you a tighter, zoomed-in view. A larger one captures a wider patch of sky, great for large targets or mosaics. But wide sensors need more from everything else. Larger filters, stricter flattener spacing, more careful back focus. So unless you need that wide field, smaller sensors can be cleaner, simpler, and cheaper to run. The IMX 462 is used in planetary cameras like the ASI 462MC. Tiny chip, narrow field, fast readout, ideal for planets and the moon, where you're zooming in on small, bright targets. Step up to the IMX 585. It's a 1 by 1.2 inch sensor, still compact but noticeably wider than the 462. It's a budget-friendly deep sky performer with strong sensitivity and enough field to frame mid-sized nebulae without requiring giant filters or premium optics. Then there's the IMX 533. Square 1-inch no amp glow, low noise. It's clean, easy to calibrate, and pairs perfectly with small refractors. Both the 585 and 533 are available in cooled versions too, making them true budget workhorses for deep sky imaging. Now compare that to the ASI-2600MC built around the IMX571. Same resolution as the 533, but on a much larger APS-C sensor. That gives you a wide view, perfect for targets like the Rosette or the California Nebula. But now you're juggling 2-inch filters, tighter tilt tolerance, and potential vignetting if your optics can't keep up. And then there's full frame, like the QHY 600M. That's your premium class. Huge sky coverage, massive image circles, stunning detail. But it comes with full frame filters, precise spacing, and nearly flawless optics. Powerful. But only if your rig is ready. Now let's go deeper, past shape and size, into the numbers that really change your image. Start with read noise. That's the camera's internal background hiss. It's especially important if you're taking short subs or shooting narrowband. Lower red noise means better contrast, cleaner faint details. But here's the trick. Spec sheets show best-case numbers. You want to look for average read noise in real-world conditions. That's what counts. Then there's quantum efficiency, how well the sensor converts light into signal. Higher QE sounds better, and it usually is, but unless you're doing extreme scientific imaging, a few percent won't make or break your photo. Your sky and your optics matter more. What about amp glow? It used to be a real problem, bright flares in long exposures, especially on early CMOS sensors. But modern designs have mostly fixed it. Some cameras are genuinely glow-free. Others rely on calibration frames to cancel it out. Either way, don't take the label at face value. Look at real dark frame tests. Now, dynamic range. This is your light handling flexibility, how well your sensor captures both faint shadows and bright stars without losing detail at either end. Look for a 14-bit or higher ADC, a decent full well capacity, and a gain setting that doesn't crush your shadows. But remember, it's not about maxing one number. It's about balance. Cooling. Cooling isn't about freezing your camera, it's about stability. A cooled sensor keeps its temperature consistent, which makes your noise consistent. That means better calibration, better stacking, and better results. For deep sky, it's essential. For planetary, you can skip it. And finally, frame rate and buffer. If you're shooting planets or the moon at high speed, those specs matter. But for deep sky work, even a slow camera can give you stunning results, as long as the data is clean. So here's the Edisla's takeaway. Spec sheets are just the start. The real story is how those specs match your telescope, your sky, and your targets. Don't just buy the biggest number. Buy the camera that fits your workflow, your mount, your goals. Most of these specs are now pretty standardized and similar across most reputable cameras. You'll usually get consistent performance unless you're looking at cheaper or off-brand models, where quality can vary more. Now, let's talk about the biggest debate in dedicated Astro cameras. Color camera or mono camera? Color cameras, known as OSC, one-shot color, are your easiest and fastest path to beautiful Astro photos. Think of them like a camera with a special color filter pattern called a Bayer matrix. It filters light so each pixel only sees red, green, or blue. Because of this, the camera fills in the missing colors by making an educated guess, blending everything into a full color image. This means no need for filter wheels or swapping filters. Just point your telescope, snap your shots, and stack them together. It's as straightforward as using your DSLR or mirrorless camera for daytime photos. With modern sensors like the IMX585 and IMX533C, color cameras now deliver crisp images with accurate natural colors, and they do it quickly. This makes them perfect if you're starting out or want to keep things simple and efficient. Now, mono cameras play a different game. Instead of guessing colors, a mono sensor captures every photon on every pixel, pure, unfiltered light. The result? Images packed with extra detail, richer contrast, and incredible control. You capture each color channel, red, green, and blue, one at a time. And with specialized narrowband filters like H-alpha, O3, and S2, you reveal the universe's hidden treasures invisible to color cameras. This is what allows mono imaging to reveal the fine structure of nebulae, the subtle tones of galaxies, and the hidden beauty of emission lines in a way color cameras simply can't match. Imagine your astrophotos transforming from simple snapshots into vibrant, detailed paintings, alive with depth and subtlety. Yes, mono imaging demands more time and investment. You'll spend longer capturing data and need extra gear like filter wheels. But if you're serious about pushing your setup and chasing the finest detail, mono is where the magic happens. But for everyone else, especially beginners, modern color cameras deliver roughly 80% of the quality with only 20% of the effort. But that's starting to change. The new QHY Minicam 8 is making mono imaging more accessible than ever, even for beginners. It packs a motorized filter wheel, temperature control, and a cooled and back-illuminated IMX585 mono sensor into one compact, lightweight body. By streamlining what used to be a complex setup, it lowers the barrier for anyone curious about mono without needing a full custom rig. It's still evolving, but it's a big step toward making serious mono performance more beginner-friendly. Now let's talk about cooling. Cooling your Astro camera isn't about making your images look better on the surface. It's about making your data consistent, stable, and easier to calibrate. When a camera sensor operates, it naturally produces thermal noise, tiny fluctuations in the signal caused by heat building up during long exposures. This noise appears as faint background grain and hot pixels, especially in the darker areas of your image. By actively cooling the sensor, usually to around -10 degrees Celsius to -20 degrees Celsius, you reduce this thermal noise significantly. More importantly, you make it predictable. Why is that a big deal? Because it allows for clean and repeatable calibration, especially when using dark frames. With a cooled camera, you can capture dark frames at the exact same temperature, gain, and exposure length as your lights, even days or weeks apart. That consistency means your calibration frames will actually subtract out the noise, leading to cleaner final images. Now, does that mean uncooled cameras are no good? Not at all. Uncooled cameras, like the IMX585, IMX462, or even older DSLR sensors, still have a place, especially for certain types of imaging. For planetary imaging, where you're capturing thousands of short, rapid frames, thermal noise is practically a non-issue. Exposure times are too short for heat to build up, and stacking hundreds or thousands of frames averages out any minor inconsistencies. They also work well for wide-field imaging under light-polluted skies, where exposures are short and gradients dominate anyway. But for deep sky imaging, where you're stacking 10, 20, or even 50 long exposures at 3, 5, or 10 minutes each, cooling is no longer optional. It becomes a core part of your imaging workflow. Because without it, calibration becomes harder, and thermal noise can overwhelm your faint signal. So, if you're planning to go deep into galaxies, nebulae, or faint star fields, a cooled camera isn't just helpful, it's essential. We've talked about the fundamentals: sensor, cooling, noise, calibration, the core of astrophotography. But now we hit a question that comes up a lot once people start looking at actual cameras. Why do so many Astro cameras look the same? Same sensor, same specs, same metal body with a USB port on the back. But somehow, they don't all feel the same. That's because behind every camera is a brand, and the brand matters more than most people think. Take ZWO, for example. They didn't just popularize CMOS cameras. They built a whole ecosystem around them. Cameras, filter wheels, focusers, mounts, all tied together with ASI Air. They're a little red brain that controls your whole imaging rig. It's all designed to work seamlessly together. And when it does, it's hard to beat. You plug things in and they just work. But there's a catch. ZWO is slowly building a walled garden. Some of their accessories, like the electronic focuser, now come with firmware restrictions. They might only work fully if you're using a ZWO camera or if ASI Air is running the show. So if you're committed to their ecosystem, great. If not, you might find yourself locked out of features unless you buy more ZWO gear. Then there's QHY. Their quieter, more technical cousin. They're not as flashy. You won't see them launching a new product every other month. But under the hood, the engineering is impressive. QHY cameras often have superior thermal regulation, robust build quality, and true 16-bit analog-to-digital conversion in some models. They're used in both amateur rigs and professional observatories. But the user experience, it's not for everyone. Installing QHY drivers can be delicate. Their software is powerful, but not always intuitive. If you like fine-tuning and don't mind a little troubleshooting, they're fantastic. Now let's talk about the new kid, Player One. This brand came out swinging with planetary cameras that instantly rivaled the established brands. Their Neptune and Apollo series became favorites almost overnight. And they didn't stop there. They're moving into deep sky territory fast, and their firmware updates have been frequent and responsive. What they don't have yet is a mature ecosystem. You're still depending on third-party software. But their durability is celebrated by the community. For what they offer right now, they're punching well above their weight class. Then there's the group of brands you've probably seen under different names. Touptek, RisingCam, Altair, Omegan. They're all based on cameras made by Touptek, a Chinese OEM. The cameras are often identical inside, same sensors, same cases, just with different stickers and drivers depending on the brand. These can be great value buys. Sometimes you'll find the same hardware as big brands for a few $100s less. But support is inconsistent. Firmware updates are rare. Compatibility with software like Nina or Ascom can be hit or miss. You'll be relying more on forums and less on direct help from the brand. Then there's ZWO, a brand that offers a little bit of everything. From entry-level telescopes to cooled cameras, they focus on making affordable gear accessible to more people. This makes them appealing to newcomers, though there can be trade-offs, quality varies, the firmware is fairly basic, and support has its limits. They cover a wide range, but don't always have the refinement or reliability you'll find in more specialized brands. Finally, we have the legacy names. Atik, Starlight Express, companies that built their reputations in the CCD era. They're still around and still respected. Their cameras are built like tanks and often used in scientific work. But their transition to CMOS has been slow, and their pricing doesn't always reflect the performance you're getting today. If you're after modern features, compact form factors, or slick integration, these older CCD brands may feel a step behind. So, despite all these cameras sharing the same Sony sensors, the experience they offer is very different. It's not just about specs. As we always say at Edisla, it's about your workflow, your budget, and how much friction you want or don't want in your imaging sessions. So the next time you're choosing a camera, remember, you're not just picking a sensor, you're picking an ecosystem and a philosophy. And that makes all the difference. Let's explore how users differ in choosing an astrophotography camera. Before that, there's one guiding principle that overshadows everything else. Your telescope dictates your camera. The scope you're using, its focal length, mount type, and optical design ultimately sets the boundaries of what your imaging setup can achieve. That's the foundation. Everything else, from sensor size to cooling systems and resolution, follows from that. Fortunately, today's dedicated astrophotography cameras are remarkably adaptable. Whether you're working with a refractor, reflector, or even a Dobsonian, most modern cameras can connect to your scope with little effort. However, compatibility isn't automatic. Sensor size, back focus requirements, and mounting thread types all play a role in proper pairing. It's not always complicated, but taking the time to confirm these specs pays off. Most beginners start small, often with a basic manual Dobsonian or a simple alt-azimuth refractor, and aim for the most accessible targets: the Moon, Jupiter, Saturn. In these early stages, planetary and lunar imaging is where the excitement begins. Here, a fast, sensitive planetary camera is ideal. Cooling isn't necessary, and USB power is sufficient. Cameras built around Sony's IMX462 or IMX585 sensors are excellent for this, delivering high frame rates and strong low-light performance. If you're also experimenting with wide-field deep sky imaging using a short focal length refractor, the IMX585 still holds up. It even opens the door to entry-level deep sky work, especially with flexible cameras like the Player One Uranus-C, which comes in both cooled and uncooled versions, allowing you to gradually step into longer exposures as your system grows. As your experience builds, so does your gear. Many astrophotographers eventually transition from DSLR setups and star trackers to more capable mounts like the AM3 or higher, and pair them with compact apochromatic refractors, scopes such as the ATED, 71F FRA300, or SQA55. This is a turning point, one where you're ready to move into more serious imaging. At this level, cooled one-shot color, OSC cameras become the go-to choice, and the Sony IMX533 sensor stands out as one of the best in its class. It offers a square 1-inch format, no amp glow, clean calibration, and delivers impressively smooth data. If you're still using an IMX585 based camera, you can absolutely continue to do so, better if it's cooled. This is also absolute stage to start thinking about monochrome imaging. Until recently, mono cameras were significantly more expensive, but that's starting to change. New offerings like the Minicam 8, as well as budget-friendly models from Touptek, RisingCam, and Player One, mono variants of the IMX 585, are making mono astrophotography more accessible than ever. A basic filter wheel is required, but this investment opens the door to narrowband imaging, especially powerful under light-polluted skies. With filters like H-alpha, O3, and S2, you can capture deep contrast and detail that simply isn't possible with color imaging alone. As your workflow matures and your technique improves, many imagers stick with small to mid-sized refractors like the 71F FRA 400 or 65 PHQ, but pair them with more advanced cameras. This is where APS-C sensors come into play. The gold standard here is the Sony IMX571, a 16-bit sensor with no amp glow, excellent dynamic range, and beautiful calibration behavior. It's the heart of cameras like the ASI 2600, QHY 268, and Player One Aries C Pro, all of which are cooled OSC cameras that produce professional-grade results. For many, this becomes their primary imaging setup for years. If you're ready to take the next step into monochrome imaging, the IMX 571mm version of the sensor makes that transition straightforward. Available in cameras like the ASI 2600mm Pro, QHY 2680M, and Player One Aries M Pro, these options allow you to maintain the same sensor quality while adding the flexibility of narrowband filters. Many imagers at this stage build dual rigs, one for quick OSC imaging and another mono-based for deep sky or narrowband work. By now, hardware upgrades take a back seat and focus turns toward perfecting technique, improving processing skills, and achieving better results from the gear you already have. Eventually, the desire to push deeper and capture even more detail leads to another level of scaling up. You may start using larger apochromatic refractors like the FRA 600, or branching into more complex instruments such as medium-sized Ritchie-Chrétien or Schmidt-Cassegrain telescopes in the 130 to 200 mm aperture range. These scopes demand higher image circle coverage and deliver narrower fields of view. And with that comes the need for full-frame sensors. The standout performer in this category is the Sony IMX 455, found in elite-level cameras like ASI 6200mm Pro or QHY 600M. With true 16-bit depth, low read noise, and a massive full-frame format, this sensor is built for professional deep sky imaging. Pairing these cameras with 50mm or larger filters, larger filter wheels, precision guiding, and long exposure capability takes you into the realm of observatory-class astrophotography. Remote setups, scripted automation, and high-efficiency workflows become the new frontier. Still, your previous gear remains useful. APS-C systems are fantastic for wide-field targets and faster sessions, while your full-frame setup can be reserved for complex deep sky projects. This is when imaging becomes less about what you can buy, and more about what you can do. And as technology evolves, the ecosystem evolves with it. ZWO, for example, has recently introduced Air versions of its most popular models, such as the ASI 585MC Pro Air and ASI 2600MC Pro Air. While the core sensors remain unchanged, these newer models integrate control systems, essentially merging imaging and guiding with ASI Air functionality for streamlined setups. This means fewer cables, more automation, and a cleaner experience, ideal for mobile and compact rigs. Their integrated ecosystem isn't for everyone, and it sometimes draws criticism for being closed, but for many users, it provides undeniable convenience. On the flip side, brands like QHY, Player One, and RisingCam offer excellent performance and greater flexibility, particularly appealing to those who want more control over their software and hardware stack. Ultimately, whether you choose a tightly integrated setup or a fully custom rig, the goal remains the same. Find what suits your workflow, matches your ambitions, and lets you make the most of every clear night. Now that we've covered the progression of gear from beginner to advanced, let's shift to something even more practical. A collection of tips, subtle techniques, and real-world advice to help you extract the best results from your system, no matter where you are on your astrophotography journey. It's easy to get swept up in the specs, the excitement, the dream of capturing crystal clear nebulas and razor-sharp galaxies. But a few common traps can turn even the best camera into a frustrating, expensive mistake. Let's go through them so you can avoid the headaches and make smarter, longer-lasting choices for your setup. First, don't blow your entire budget on the camera and forget the rest of your system. A great sensor won't save you if your mount can't track, your scope can't hold focus, or your cables are unreliable. Your camera is just one link in the imaging chain. Filters, power delivery, dew control, data handling, and most importantly, your mount are just as critical. A balanced setup will always perform better than one with a single overpowered component. Then there's the issue of getting locked into a hardware ecosystem you don't fully understand. ASI Air, for example, is an excellent platform, but it only supports ZWO devices. Plug in a QHY camera or a third-party filter wheel, and you'll quickly find support is limited or non-existent. Some ecosystems even restrict compatibility at the firmware level, making certain accessories useless unless you stay entirely within their lineup. That autofocuser you bought on sale? It may not work unless everything else is from the same brand. Before committing, ask yourself, do you want simplicity with brand lock-in or flexibility with a bit more setup effort? Please check out our ultimate guide on astrophotography controllers for more insight. That said, if you're after serious build quality without being tied to a single ecosystem, brands like QHY and Player One are strong alternatives. They offer high-performance sensors, robust cooling systems, and excellent image quality, all without requiring you to use a specific control system. They're ideal for users who value flexibility, open software compatibility, and are comfortable managing a more customizable workflow. These brands fly a little under the radar, but they consistently deliver professional-level results. On the other end of the spectrum, be very cautious about ultra-cheap cameras that seem too good to be true. Some models cost half as much as the established brands we've discussed, and for a good reason. Take one look at the raw images or even the build quality in your hands, and the difference is immediately obvious. Poor sensor calibration, noisy data, unstable drivers, questionable thermal design, these are all common in bargain bin cameras. It's tempting to go cheap, especially when you're starting out, but in astrophotography, those corners usually cut you later. Invest once, and you'll save yourself countless hours of frustration. Next, avoid spec chasing without thinking about workflow. A 16-bit full-frame camera might look impressive on paper until you realize your laptop can't process 50 GB stacks without lagging or crashing. Bigger isn't always better if the rest of your system can't keep up. Choose what fits your actual use case, not just what looks best in marketing charts. Efficiency, reliability, and workflow consistency matter far more than raw specs alone. Let's also talk about software and driver compatibility, which is often overlooked until it's too late. Some cameras work flawlessly in capture tools like Nina, but might crash or behave inconsistently in others like ASI Studio or SharpCap. ZWO generally offers a smooth plug-and-play experience, but other brands, especially newer or smaller ones, may require specific drivers or frequent updates. Always check that your chosen camera plays nicely with your software stack before clicking purchase. And finally, don't ignore resale value. If you plan to upgrade in the future, and most imagers do, certain brands retain their value better than others. ZWO popularity and ASI Air integration mean their cameras often resell quickly. QHY and Player One do have a good resale value. Niche or obscure brands? Not so much. It's not the only thing to consider, but it's worth factoring in if you're building your system in stages or plan to scale up over time. Before we wrap up, here are a few final but critical points that can make or break your long-term astrophotography experience. First, always check a brand's firmware update history. Some manufacturers quietly stop supporting older models, leaving users stuck with bugs or outdated performance. You don't want to invest in gear that becomes obsolete the moment something goes wrong. Also, pay attention to user reviews from your own region. Tech support can vary dramatically depending on where you live, and good hardware means little if you're left hanging when you need help. That's why at Edisla, we don't just sell gear, we stand behind it. We constantly monitor the industry and handpick only the most reliable cameras and accessories. And when you buy from us, you're backed by our expert support during the warranty period and even after if repairs or troubleshooting are ever needed. We're not just a retailer. We're your imaging partner. Choose wisely. Finally, a quick but vital reminder. Watch out for condensation. In humid climates, a poorly sealed camera can become a moisture trap. Water and electronics are a bad mix, and long-term reliability starts with good design and proper protection. In the end, it's the little things. Trusted support, smart planning, and weather-aware choices. That's separate frustration from satisfaction. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with a fellow stargazer. Until next time, clear skies and happy imaging.